All right, guys. Welcome to another session of Gosu Academy. Today, what we sort of have decided to focus on together with the people here in the academy is we are focusing on mechanics. More specifically, aim, since that is a topic that is interesting to any player ever, basically. But also things like movement. We'll talk about the importance of movement. I'll probably give you a few tips on, for example, ladder movement. Basically, this will be a session fully focused on mechanics. I will share with you some thoughts I have about aim in general. A lot of it is very recent because I've had a lot of thoughts about aim. And with the RMRs sort of being played, I've been able to watch a lot of Counter Strike. Just in general, I feel I have a really new and fresh perspective on this after I have retired. And due to this, I think there will be a lot of valuable information that I'll be able to share with you. If you'd like to join the Academy yourself, there is a link in the description. You can try it out for 30 days for free. And yeah, doesn't cost you anything. If you don't like it, there's money back guarantee. You can join the Academy. You can help decide what future sessions should look like. You can ask your own questions. And overall, you can be a part of something bigger. I am one of, I think, 3 coaches that we have per week. I do Thursdays. I think there's Tuesdays and Sundays as well. And yeah, joining Gosu Academy makes it so you can join all these other coaching sessions as well. It's not just my coaching sessions that you will be able to be joining. So now that that is out of the way, as I've already said to the students who are here, I think today we'll be focusing a lot on actually watching YouTube, and I'll be drawing some things in Paint as well. What I want to start with is actually something on YouTube. So let me bring up YouTube real quick. Let's do it like this. And I need to stream on Discord as well. The right thing. Not that I forget. Okay, so here is my YouTube. And first of all, if there's anyone who has any questions, you can always let me know. My thinking recently in terms of sensitivity is that you have players who have a high sensitivity but a very shaky aim. The best example of this is Simple. If you find a video of Simple's highlights, it's very common that we will see sort of the Simple jiggle. So when he shoots, especially with AWP or with Deagle or something like this, his aim is pretty much the opposite of clean. We'll probably see it here. When he shoots, even though he has a sort of one-shot weapon, there is a lot of wiggle after each shot. And like here you saw a little bit of wiggle. This was all kind of clean. I remember there was a this one. This is a perfect example. On Dust 2 against Team Liquid. I'll put some music on, or like the audio on here. Already wiggle on the first kill. Wiggle. More wiggle. And the last one, also a little bit of wiggle. So, if we then go and search Simple settings, we can go and check out his sensitivity. He has got an EDPI of 1236. This is basically, if you don't understand how sensitivity works, this is kind of the only number that matters. EDPI in a game like Counter-Strike and EDPI in a game like Valorant is not one-to-one. So comparing sort of game to game is not as simple as just looking at EDPI. But for Counter-Strike, EDPI is the best sort of metric we have for sensitivity, since the amount of DPI you have, you basically time, like you do like a multiplication from the DPI and the sensitivity, and that's what's going to give you the EDPI. That's why if you have someone with 800 DPI, if he has half the sensitivity of Simple, so 1.545, he will have the same EDPI, they will have the same sensitivity. That's how that works. When you have a player like Simple, and he has this wiggle, you are automatically thinking he has a pretty high sensitivity. And without looking up the stats, because I know this to be true, the average professional Counter-Strike player has an EDPI of roughly around 880, meaning that Simple is definitely one of the players who has a very high EDPI. It makes sense then that he has, a high EDPI that gives him therefore this kind of wiggle. But if we take another player, another very famous player, Forrest, and we look at his highlights, we'll find any random place in the highlights, and most of the time what we will see is him having incredibly clean aiming. Like, all of his kills will be basically, here it was a little bit shaky, there's just a kind of an adjustment, but there is no wiggle. Let's see if we can find this. This is with the deagle. Okay, this is just an interesting one. I'll see if I can find a good highlight to prove my point. Like, the spray here is very clean. It is through smoke. Here, no wiggle whatsoever on the AWP kill. No wiggle. Even here, if we slow this down and take a look at the tracking, because that is typically a really good way to show the wiggle as well. I've slowed it down now to half speed. Here there's no wiggle, and look at the clean tracking on Device's head. There is no wiggle, even though he's kind of being caught off guard, and it's a little bit of a stressful situation. And this is basically how Forrest works. There is never any jiggle. Let's see if we can find a good deagle highlight. This one is probably a good example. Let me make sure we put it on the speed of 1 again. You can put the casters on as well. As well, partial by sure. They have maximum loss bonus into the next round. Like an air attack coming in momentarily. If you haven't watched Forrest play, just enjoy this anyway, because this guy is one of the most interesting players to watch of all time. It's hard to see because it's just poor observing, I guess. I think there may or may not be a replay at the end, but you will see on the last 2 kills that his aim is extremely clean. And typically players who are good with deagle, look, just a one tap with no wiggle whatsoever, and another one tap with no jiggle, perfect tracking movement. Then, when we're watching this after having watched someone like Simple play, the assumption that we're automatically making is, okay, Forrest must be a low sensitivity player. His one tap accuracy is great. He hit 3 1-deeks, and then he basically hit 2 1-taps afterwards with the AK. If we think about people with very good one-tap accuracy, Nico, who is actually, he's not playing against him in this moment. He must have left mouse shortly before. But if we take a look at someone like Nico, known for having great first bullet accuracy, we see his EDPI is less than half that of Simple. And he also plays what I believe is a bigger mouse than Simple. It makes sense for someone with a very low sensitivity to have good first bullet accuracy. If we check Forrest, well, he in fact has an EDPI that is higher than that of Simple. But when watching Forrest play compared to how Simple plays, it almost doesn't add up in our minds. And I can give you many more examples of players with very clean aiming. Someone like Oscar, also very high EDPI. Flamesy, also a very high EDPI. Armanek, very high EDPI. I mean, maybe not so many people know this guy, but Spellan, okay, he is not even on this. But I can tell you, he plays extremely high sensitivity. I think higher than all the others. In fact, even someone like Voxic, who is actually the EDPI king of all of Counter-Strike, has quite clean aiming considering he plays a very high sensitivity.
Wasn't Scream also high sense?
Scream was somewhat high sensitivity. He was playing 1.25 on 800, I believe. Yeah, so this is Valorant settings. I'm not sure if we can... Okay, we can find... Yeah, so he was playing 1.25 on 800. It's an EDPI of 1000. It is slightly higher than average. And he is also a good example of a guy who has extremely clean aim. But we do also have other players who have a very low sensitivity, but pretty, what I call, chaotic aim. One of the best examples of this is someone like Kerrigan. He definitely has times where his aim is very clean, but he definitely also has times where his aim is very chaotic. Actually, I have a kind of good example of this. Yeah, I hate to show Kerrigan failing here, but this is a pretty good example of someone with what I would call chaotic aim. I don't even think his aim looks that chaotic, but imagine how someone like Forrest or Nico would approach this situation compared to how Kerrigan approaches this situation. So he's running, and it's just full random. Like he could stop, take his time. Obviously, this is the error that he makes. But also, if you look, there is very little, how can I say, focus on aiming at the right spot before he presses the mouse. Another example of chaotic aim, I think someone like Electronic, while an amazing player with a great aim, he is a guy who has very shaky and chaotic aim. See if we can see it already in this first highlight. Like it's very that's pretty clean. But most of the time when he's defending pit or something like this, let's see if we can find a good example. This is clean because he's behind someone. Actually, I don't know. His aim looks really clean here. I don't know. Yeah. Is there someone who wants to say something?
I think it's like with riflers, like the movement is really important when you counter strafe, because when you like miss your counter strafes, that's when your aim becomes more shaky. But when you strafe perfectly into a person, you don't even need to adjust.
That's kind of true. Like what is typically true as well about these players who have a little bit more chaotic aim is that their flicks are very good because that's what they rely on doing. Would you agree with that?
Would a chaotic aimer also be like more of an opper? Would have like a more op-based playstyle?
Well, that's the thing. There are different types of AWP players. When thinking about someone like Saiwu, for example, he's the opposite of a chaotic aimer, and yet he's still, well, basically the yeah, maybe not the GOAT AWPer, but he's only a couple of years from being it, most likely, and or basically just the GOAT. But you can have different playstyles in different roles, and they will also work. There are definitely times here where Electronics aim is a little bit shaky. It's even easier if you check like all of these clips that you are watching right now is 16:9, so full HD. A lot of these players play 4x3, and probably if you would watch like his stream, or if you would watch a actually maybe I can find simple FPL stream. Let me see if I can find a highlight, because you will see on his resolution it looks even worse with the shake. Like maybe we can find it here even. About what you said, I think a lot of AWPers do tend to have a like more chaotic aim, and the reason is that their strength lies in having really good flicks. You know, if you have very chaotic aim, AWP is typically a good role for you to play because you don't need clean aim to be a good AWPer. And me myself, for example, I have very chaotic aim. I've tried to practice this a lot. At times I was pretty good at it. At times I wasn't very good at it because I didn't practice. And I sort of have a point that I want to make eventually about this sort of chaotic versus not chaotic. I want to see if I can find a good example. I know this highlight is really sick. I think this highlight, he doesn't have that shaky aim. Okay, I think it's very clean most of the time. But here you can actually see, let's try to slow it down. You should be able to catch the wiggle when this guy jumps across, and also the third kill he gets. Like, he's tracking him, but it's not very precise tracking. Let me take off the sound. So it's like he's just shooting randomly and just hitting somewhere, and now there's a lot of wiggle, as you can see, especially in slow mo. You can see it here as well. There's actually a lot of, I guess instead of wiggle, what I can call it is unnecessary movement. And this is, I think this was maybe the highlight I was actually exactly looking for. What I think, and what I have been thinking for some years, and this is when the point is being made, is that players in Counter-Strike will trend towards having a lower sensitivity on average in the future. And it's because the more sort of well orchestrated a T-site is, the less need for a high sensitivity you have. Anyone who has been here or like for that session, or who watched it on YouTube, the cone of awareness, the whole point of the cone of awareness theory that I've made is that you want to play in a way where the sort of cone sort of the amount you have to move your mouse before killing your opponent when you see him is as small as possible. Players like Simple are good at the sort of good at flicking and good at big adjustments, more so than small adjustments. And there's still a point coming up, but I think maybe I interrupted someone who had a question. I'm not sure. Okay. If not, then I will put on Counter-Strike real quick. I will show you exactly what I mean. So
I was thinking,
go ahead.
as a 600 EDPI player,
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to I aim well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of want to have a higher sensitivity, but I'm not sure if I should really just stick with it and just say, it works, or try to get somewhere where I feel a little more comfortable. Because I do like 800 EDPI, but I feel like I'm just gonna need an extended period of time with it.
Well, this is kind of the perfect question, because this is my whole point. My whole point is that I want you all to be walking out of this session with having found your perfect sensitivity, basically. And I can't say for sure if my theory is true, but my theory is that sensitivity actually does not matter at all in Counter-Strike. The only thing that matters is how good are your micro adjustments. And then from that question, you have to find the sensitivity that fits you. So I've shown you examples of Simple, for example, who plays a pretty high sensitivity, has pretty chaotic aim. I think there are low sensitivity players who have pretty chaotic aim. They are harder to find because if you have low sensitivity and chaotic aim, it's less noticeable than if you have chaotic aim and high sensitivity. But Kerrigan is an example. I've seen it happen a lot. It probably won't be so visible in his highlights, but if you watch just Kerrigan play, he does have quite chaotic aim at times. I, at times, have quite chaotic aim, even at times when I do well. There will be times where my aim overshoots. I'm over flicking or I'm shaky. What I think I've come to the conclusion of is that since Counter-Strike is a game where you really have to be able to do all types of aiming, basically, and where accuracy is very, very important, it is also a game where you need to find a sensitivity where your micro adjustments fit your sensitivity. So someone like Voxic, for example, he can play an EDPI of 2400. I'm right now on 8 DPI. So if I put my sensitivity to 3, this is essentially what a Voxic sensitivity is. I am barely moving my mouse, and if I am, let's say, going to peak ramp and I want to peak at headshot level, if I have to, imagine I'm holding palace and then I want to peak slope. Flicking down here is tough, and keeping my crosshair in the right position, it is tough, even for someone who has been playing 15,000 hours.
We can't see CS.
You can't see CS. Okay, perfect. That's good you said then. Yeah, I fixed it on my OBS, but I didn't fix it on on the Discord stream. So basically, what I was showing was if I'm peaking palace and then I want to go and peak slope, I can probably get in the right area, but it's difficult for me to get perfectly in the right headshot height. So if someone is sitting here, it's hard for me to aim accurately, and especially if I'm spraying, because it's so precise, or it has to be so precise, this is very difficult for me. For someone like Voxic, this is possible, and I would even argue for me it is impossible. On an offline server, I'm able to do it pretty well. Like, let's say I'm holding slope and someone shoots me from con. I can do a pretty fast movement and start spraying. But in a match type scenario where there is no room for error, basically, and also I'm affected by nerves, I'm affected by, whatever is going on mentally in that moment, I will be way more jumpy. I will grip my mouse harder, which will make me shake. And this is an example of why I could never play competitively at Voxic sensitivity. I would be horrendous at it because my micro adjustments compared to the average person, I view as being suboptimal. I think my fine motor skills compared to the average person are below average. And the way I coped with this in my time as a player was I was playing a below average sensitivity. So I was playing a sensitivity of 0.8, which is an EDPI of 640. So quite a bit lower than most other players. What's worth noting about this EDPI of 880 is that this is the average sensitivity of both riflers and AWPers, but the EDPI of AWP players is slightly higher. I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's something like 920. So you can imagine me playing as a professional AWP player, and actually in my time in Sprout, I would argue I was one of the biggest sort of upcoming talents on the AWP role. Having a basically 50%, oh no, sorry, not 50%, but like having basically 2/3 of the sensitivity that the average AWP player has doesn't necessarily put me at a disadvantage. It just means it puts me sort of as an outlier. And the reason I felt this was necessary for me to do was because exactly my micro adjustments were much worse. My small movements were worse, and I would say coped with it, or I adjusted to it by lowering my sensitivity. If my name is Forrest and I'm playing an EDPI of 1400, right? So he was playing a sensitivity of 1.75. Well, again, this is probably much too high for me to play well competitively, because when I get a fight, my aim will be too shaky and not precise. I would maybe be able to get away with this in another shooter, Fortnite, or maybe whatever. My tracking aim could still get pretty clean. Maybe some game like Apex Legends would be possible for me to play, where tracking is really important. Or Overwatch in certain roles, I would be able to cope by playing like what's it even called, heroes, where I guess sort of smooth aiming is not that important. But in Counter-Strike, I don't have that choice. And in Counter-Strike, because precision is so important, hitting a headshot typically means a guaranteed kill. Having a sensitivity that is too high for me to have good micro adjustments makes things way more difficult for someone like me who has, I guess, a below average level of fine motor skills. What I'm saying with this, and the point I'm trying to make with this, is that if your name is Voxic, or if your name is Forest, or if your name is Flamesy, and your micro adjustments are very good even on a very high sensitivity, I don't see a reason to change it. It gives you more freedom, and as long as you can still control this in a good way, you should just keep at it. I don't think if you have a high sensitivity, you should change by going to a lower sensitivity, so long as you feel you have control of your sensitivity. And that is kind of the main point. When I am playing on an offline server, I could feel like this is sensitivity that I can control. Like, I would be able to keep my crosshair at headshot height. I can even spray pretty accurately. But as soon as we introduce a competitive element, people shooting back, nerves, all these things, I know from experience, this is just an uncontrollable sensitivity for me personally. At the same time, if you are a very low sensitivity player, like I think it was you, Farium, right, that said you were like, how much? 500 EDPI or something? 600 EDPI, so even lower than what I was playing in my, I guess, kind of prime. Well, if you feel that getting a higher sensitivity is something that seems kind of uncontrollable, I would advise you to not change. I think one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career was I started changing, because I was playing this sensitivity already for maybe 5 years, at least 3-4 years before going pro, and this was what I was used to. And when I started experimenting with going to a higher sensitivity, At the start, it was just a sensitivity of 1. This was still a 25% increase of sensitivity, and while I could control it, my aim was no longer clean. I felt nerves were getting to me more, I guess, in a way, and overall, it felt less kind of controllable. What you should, I think, remove from your brain is everything I've talked about in terms of average sensitivity, and instead you should go into games considering if you feel you can, if you have control of your micro adjustments. Someone like Simple is, to me, sort of an anomaly. Being that good while still having such a shaky aim is something we've basically not seen before in CSGO, and we basically have not seen after. Obviously, the level of Simple is, in general, basically something we've never seen before or after, at least not in terms, when thinking like longevity-wise. The only one who's really there is Saiwu. Even some legend like Device, the most winning player of all time, isn't as sort of individually highly regarded as someone like Simple. And I think it's crazy that Simple has gotten to the level that he has with a sensitivity that sort of, by the looks of it, is too high. I remember when I played stand-in for Complexity, and I played with Config, who has an EDPI of the exact average, 880. At least I'm pretty sure he used to. Actually, he might have even been playing an EDPI of 960. I think he was playing 1.2 on 800, or maybe 2.4, 400, but it's the same thing. What was interesting about this was that Config, a player who's known for having very clean aiming, he watched me play, and I was playing a sensitivity of 1. Holy shit, I hate this new command they added. So I had a sensitivity of 1. My EDPI was 800, which was lower than what Config had. And after playing with me for a few days as a stand-in, Config came to me and he said, I think your sensitivity is too high. And a part of me knew that that was true, because the sensitivity I've been playing my entire career, basically, at least in my prime, was, from 1, 20% lower. And when he said it, it hit me that obviously people are different. Even though Config was playing a higher sensitivity than me, his aim was far cleaner. And no matter how much work I put in, I would never be able to have as clean and consistent and good tracking aim as Config had with his sensitivity. He is literally built different. And it is likely something I would never be able to teach myself. I've tried, I've put in the work, and it's never been possible for me. What I should have done instead is I should have stuck to a sensitivity that fit my level of micro adjustments. And I think this is the one sentence I want people to remember from this session is adjust your sensitivity to fit your level of micro adjustments. Because really that's what Counter-Strike comes down to. You have players, arguably the greatest rifle player of all time, probably the best rifle player of all time, Nico, is playing an EDPI of 550. He is playing an extremely low sensitivity, and yet he is one of the greatest players of all time. If I put Nico on simple sensitivity, I am not convinced that he would be anywhere near as good as he is right now. And because I haven't seen Nico play a very high sensitivity, because he's never really tried, I think it's possible his level of micro adjustments is not that good. I think the reason specifically he has picked a low sensitivity and likes to play at this sensitivity is because this is what feels controllable to him. And his teammate, Hunter, who is also his cousin, is playing an EDPI of, I think, 960. While Nico has an EDPI, I think we checked it, of like 550. These people are in the same family. They have, I guess, part DNA that is the same. These guys are both playing in one of the greatest teams currently in Counter-Strike, and these people play almost, Hunter almost has 2 times the sensitivity of his cousin. I don't think, how can I say, that this is a coincidence. I think this is a sensitivity that Hunter has found through trial and error, and a sensitivity that Nico has found through trial and error. And the reason why a sensitivity needs to be adjusted to your level of micro adjustments is because what I see in Counter-Strike, from having watched a lot of professional Counter-Strike, almost everyone that we talk about as being a great aimer has smooth, beautiful, consistent aim with a high accuracy, like a high first bullet accuracy, basically. So let me make sure this time I will take you guys off the Discord first. And let me open this again. And let me do this for the video as well. So if I go now to HLTV and we go through the list of players who has the best aim on this top list. Well, I would argue that someone like Robs, he has phenomenal aim. Mechanically, very skilled player. Everyone knows that. He has very clean aim. Someone like Brokey, very calm guy. In fact, also plays a pretty low sensitivity. An EDPI of 760, even for an AWP. I think someone like Frozen has pretty clean aim. I think Rain has clean aim. Going to Vitality. I think Saiwu has very clean aim. Flamesy has very clean aim. Spinks has very clean aim. And Messi has very clean aim. And to some extent, actually, Apex has pretty clean aim as well. Going to Spirit, Dunk, who is obviously the revelation of 2024. We all knew he was coming, but we just had no idea how good he would be. Here's a guy, again, playing above the average EDPI, playing a very sort of small mouse, a very fast mouse, and yet he has extremely clean aiming with basically perfect tracking aim. Instead of me just saying it, I will prove it. Finding a random video here, and we'll see in this 1-on-4, how does his aim look? So that was a little bit jumpy. It was like a fast adjustment because the guy was in an unexpected position. Now he got another kill. Let's see how he handles this. Yeah, bro. Okay, let me find a highlight where we actually look at his point of view, because somehow all these highlights, like here, this is an example of really extremely clean aiming. Very fast aiming and very precise aiming. His first bullet accuracy is phenomenal. Even though he has a higher than average EDPI. Magix plays, from what I remember, an extremely low sensitivity. Look, lower than Nico. And he has clean aiming. Shiro, I would say, has kind of clean aiming. He's about the average EDPI. Sontix has clean aiming, and Chopper, again, kind of the IGL. I think we can disregard him. We can go down the list. Someone like Jimpad, very, very good aimer, clean aiming. Broland, very, very good aimer, clean aiming. Surgeon, for the most part, clean aiming. And Torshi, I would also say, for the most part, clean aiming. G2, clean aiming, clean aiming, clean aiming. I guess actually pretty clean aiming, just not getting, I guess, that many kills. And Monacy, I mean, he is just, yeah, he's got great flicks, but actually when you watch him, he has pretty clean aiming as well. I don't want to go through more teams, but the point, again, that I'm trying to make is that what we generally think of as the best aimers are people who have very smooth, consistent aim. And the reason why this is important is because exactly what we talked about with the micro adjustments, you want to find a way where no matter what your level of micro adjustments is, no matter if your fine motor skills are garbage like mine, or if they're great, you want to find a sensitivity where you are able to have clean aiming and have your sensitivity be controllable, basically. If you're one of those guys who's able to have an EDPI of 1500 and have clean aiming, well, all the power to you. In fact, I envy you, or at least I'm very jealous, because these are typically some of the most mechanically skilled players, the guys who have a high sensitivity and clean aiming. But what Counter-Strike kind of comes down to, and this is an extended part of this theory that clean aiming is better, is this metric called TTK. TTK is short for time to kill, And it is somewhat the only metric that matters in Counter-Strike when it comes to sensitivity. I don't care if you have 5 times the sensitivity of Voxic, or if you have half the sensitivity of Nico. Well, if your time to kill is very good, it means that whenever you get a duel, you will kill the opposing player very fast. You can forget high sensitivity, low sensitivity, whatever. You need to find something, the appropriate sensitivity where your time to kill goes as low as possible. And this can be done in different ways, because someone like Simple, for example, his time to kill is, let me head back into Counter-Strike. Simple's time to kill, if we go to Simple sensitivity, is, let's say, good, because he is able to hold an angle and flick over to an opponent fast, and he is spraying a lot. So like he will go from here to here, and then he will spam, and he will kill. Someone like Nico, for example, what he will maybe do different is that when this guy, like when he's peeking here, he will swing a bit wider, and then he will like use his movement to one tap. One is not necessarily better than the other. One is not necessarily a faster time to kill than the other. It's just a different style. The thing, though, the sort of even further extension of this theory is something that I'm going to need paint for. It's my first kind of coaching session where I've had to bring up paint. My drawing skills, well, you can probably guess it, because I've already said that my fine motor skills are awful. I am horrendous at drawing, so please bear with me. Basically, if you imagine aim is a spectrum. Let me see if I can get this straight. So here is, let's say, 0. And here is, let's say, 10. Then in the middle, we have 5. Bro, I really want these lines to be straight, but again, you see the minds, like fine motor skills come in. We will put 0, we will put 5, and we will put 10. Then the spectrum of aiming that we're basically talking about is how hard is this shot to hit. So imagine a spectrum of how hard is this shot to hit. A 0 is where you are behind an opponent, right behind him. You have a shotgun, and all you need to do is aim center mass. You need to press mouse 1, and that will give you the kill. Imagine the easiest kill you could ever think of, right? That would be a 0. Then on the other hand, imagine the hardest shot you could ever hit. An insane 180 flick shot, headshot with a deagle, whatever. Well, every player, I think, is capable of basically hitting the 0s, obviously. And most players are capable of hitting, like most top professionals are capable of hitting a 10. It's going to be very rare, and it's a situation where the stars need to align for this to work, but it is somewhat possible. I would argue someone like Nico, for example, because the sensitivity is so low. Well, we can talk about it. I will make another line. Maybe I can make it. We'll give it a red color. Someone like Nico, for example. We ask ourselves, compared to the average pro, is he as good as or better at hitting the 0s, basically the easiest shots? Well, I think someone like Nico, except for that one round on Nuke at the Stockholm Major, I think it was Stockholm, right, where he missed Simple in the back. He is typically very good at hitting shots in the back, far above the average player, and this is a strength he has from playing a very low sensitivity. If we would make a line describing, like, let's say, Nico's comfort zone in aiming, well, I would say a 0, a 1, a 2, and all those kind of things. That is something he's very comfortable hitting. He's overall got a lot of consistency, again, because he is a pretty low sensitivity player. But there is a point we get to where Nico will not hit a 180 1D without stopping. His sensitivity likely isn't high enough. So maybe a 10 and a 9, it's just not possible for Nico to hit this. This makes it so for Nico, his comfort zone, or the area where he, because he is one of the greatest players of all time, is always at least as good or better than the average pro, will be in this area. But I bet you if we go to HLTV, for example, again, I will go there. I'm not going to change the Discord stream real quick, but I will see if I can find some player with a high sensitivity. Yeah, I don't even know. I think even someone like, let's just take Wicadia, because he's kind of new. He would probably, because he's Turkish, they typically have very high sensitivities, and he would probably be, I guess, less than average, or like compared to the other pros at hitting the zeros and the ones. Instead, his kind of, what do we call it? Like his line will look differently. I'll even take Simple as an example because he's even better. Everyone knows Simple is amazing. And if I ask everyone here, is Simple capable of hitting a 10? I think Simple is maybe the player in the world who is the most capable of hitting a 10. He is far above average when it comes to hitting a 10. But because of this wiggle aim he has, and because of him not having very clean aim, I would argue that his zeros and his ones are worse than a sort of average professional player. If I showed it on my stream a while ago. Let me again show you guys my thing here. Wait, hang on. This is not the right one, I think. You know what? I will just show you my screen. It's easier. I had a video I made on Simple a while ago. This one. And what was interesting when I watched the demo, because I was looking at how good is he, or how good has he become in those 5 years. Here's an example of Simple absolutely having a 0 or a 1. I guess you could argue both. But as body moves, he overflicks his target, he misses, and now he has a sort of tougher shot. Let's call this a 3 or a 4. And he hits it. So the easy shot he actually misses, but the harder shot he doesn't. I think if this was Saiwu in this situation, he wouldn't miss this. And I know Simple would hit the shot either way. He's basically toying with his food. But there is the case that when body moves, Simple actually overflicks his target. Something I think we would never see Saiwu do, for example. That's why, if we again go back to Paint, I think Simple absolutely has 10s and 9s and 8s and so on, and down the stretch. But we get to a point where, because he doesn't have smooth aim, he is lesser than the average professional. I think his zeros and his ones, the average pro is better at hitting the easy shots than someone like Simple. Now again, since this is, I would argue, pretty genetically connected in a way, I think Simple has one of the best work rates in all of Counter-Strike. And I bet you he has spent more time on deathmatch and aim practice than almost any player out there. And yet he still has this wiggle aim. He still sometimes misses people in the back where the average professional would be doing a better job. And why is that? Well, it's because it doesn't come down to practice. It comes down to, I think, genetics. And so how does a player who is at a sort of genetic disadvantage, let's call it that, adjust? Well, one way to adjust, which I think is the kind of obvious way to adjust, is Simple should have lowered his sensitivity. And I think there is arguments, which is crazy. There are arguments that in my head at least, that Simple would have been a better player if he would be playing a slightly lower sensitivity. From watching him play, it seems that he would be better off having something he would be able to control even better. I'm not saying he would be far greater, but I think there is the possibility he would be a more consistent player and therefore better. But since he didn't do this, how is it possible that Simple is that good at the game? This is where, again, I think Simple is sort of a statistical anomaly, but it also explains why he's known for having this very aggressive, risky playstyle, because that is the sort of, how can I say, that's the fix. Let's jump back into Counter-Strike again. I know there's a lot of jumping today, guys, but it's necessary for me to get my points across. If I am relying less on smooth aim and more on flicking, because that's what people with high sensitivities tend to do, and also it's what AWP players tends to do most of the time. It's also what people with bad micro adjustments tends to do, because they don't have another option. Well, if I'm peeking out CT and I'm peeking like I want to peek Firebox, maybe instead of taking the angles one by one and being super like specific about clearing it, maybe what I want to do is wide swing and adjust instead. With Simple, he's known to have like a very risky playstyle. He is probably one of the best ever, if not the best ever, at playing the AWP up close. We've seen a ton of times where he will be like with an AWP, playing around a smoke, and someone's pushing him here while someone is pushing him here, and he's like with his jiggle aim jumping up and like killing and stuff like this. This is something that he has had to master in a way where he's had to adjust his playstyle to play more risky, since he needs, I guess, not an advantage of surprising his opponent, but because his aim is less consistent and he can't rely on it to be consistent, he has to put himself in spots where instead of it coming down to a long-range duel with the Deagle where he needs to really like smooth, slow aim, it's better for him maybe to have a situation where he runs out here and has to like just adjust. With this said, because now I've made sort of three different parts of the theory. There's the micro adjustments need to fit your sensitivity. That was kind of the, if we follow like a scientific method, that's sort of the hypothesis. And then looking into why that is necessary. Well, I think it's because this, that I showed in Paint, this sort of spectrum or this range that each player has, you typically want as wide of a range as possible. I gave obviously Nico a range of like a comfort range of 0 to 8. I gave Simple also a comfort range of, let's say, 10 to 2. But this is because these guys are the greatest players ever. If we would not have a professional player, if we would have an average Faceit grinder, well, maybe where he is better than the average Faceit player is something like a 1 to a 5. Nico and Simple are just on average a lot better than the average, if that makes sense. But looking at that spectrum and that range and everything, what it also has the sort of, I wouldn't say necessarily the unfortunate connection of, or like the unfortunate result of, is that the gain that someone like Saiwu has, the gain that someone like Dunk has, the reason these guys can be so extremely consistent and have these superstar performances where they're completely taking over a game, well, actually, that's kind of not even the truth. I saw a statistic, I haven't double checked, but I'm pretty sure it's true, that Dunk didn't have a single ace at the entirety of Katowice, and yet he had such an incredibly high multi-kill percentage. Well, why is that? It's because players like Saiwu and players like Dunk, they don't shine as much in individual rounds. They don't have crazy highlights the same way Simple has. But what they do have is a high level of consistency. They will have many rounds where they are performing very well. And so if you get 1 or 2 kills every round, sort of on average over a match, you will at the end of the day, like at the end of the game, have very good statistics, but very few highlights. Whereas if you instead are someone like Simple, who maybe 1 out of 3 rounds will get an ace, this is obviously a very extreme example, well, you will have more highlights naturally, but you will also have a sort of smaller level of consistency. Is one better than the other? Sort of no, because being that one guy who plays very aggressive and sort of takes over and dominates a game, and has like that one winning round where you get an ace, that can have a lot of advantages as well. Having that one guy who can pull you out of a hole. But having a player like Saivu or Dunk who keeps always being good is also good. You can't really say one is better than the other. But from an individual point of view, and this is basically the whole theory, this is basically the whole point of all of this yapping I've been doing for 50 minutes, is if I am Simple, and I know that if I... let me see if I can find a better example. If I am Simple, and I know some guy is standing here, because my aim is more inconsistent and my range is not as good at the 1-2s, let's say, it means there is a sort of bigger risk that the duels that I get that trend closer to the lower side of the range, let's say this is a 2 or 3 or 4, I am less likely to consistently be winning this duel than someone like Saivu. Because someone like Saivu, he will come out here and his crosshair will already be in the right place. He will already be having a completely clean span. There is less likelihood of an error in his aim. Exactly because his micro adjustments fit his sensitivity better. If there is someone like Simple and you come out here, well, all it takes is like basically a little bit of shaking for the bullets to miss the intended target. And this doesn't mean that Simple is worse than Saivu. It just means having what is a 50-50 fight. Yeah, let me see if I can explain this in a good way. A 50-50 fight, when your name is Saivu, might be a 60-40 fight. Because you, on average, are better than the player you are having the 50-50 fight against at having 50-50 fights. It's a little bit crazy. You might have to, if you watch this video, rewatch what I just said 2 or 3 times for it to actually make sense. But it does kind of make sense. Whereas someone like Simple, well, maybe for Simple, a 50-50 fight is pretty 50-50. Because both players are equally good at the sort of easier range of aim. Whereas something what for Saivu would be a 30-70 fight, so like Saivu having a 30% chance of winning this fight, for Simple that might be a 40-60% fight and might be more worth taking. That means someone who has chaotic aim, their advantages lies in the unpredictable part of their aim. They could take a fight that they normally wouldn't win and have a higher likelihood of some inconsistency hitting and them winning the lottery. Whereas someone like Saivu, he doesn't even buy a ticket for the lottery. He is like that. Simple is like the jock who goes to a college party, I don't know, and lives his whole life with ultimate risk. Saivu is that boring guy who ends up with a beautiful family and as an accountant. His risks are reliable. His risks are not really risks. He knows, for him, it's possible to understand where does my limit go. Simple doesn't have a limit. He could hit a 10 and save the round. And while that gives Simple an extra dimension compared to Saivu, it gives Saivu an extra dimension in another regard. Saivu has the extra dimension of knowing what is a good fight and what is a bad fight to a greater extent than Simple. If Saivu is here, and 9 times out of 10, he wins when he swings here, that is something very reliable, and he can have a consistent playstyle which will give consistent results. Someone like Simple, because of the errors in his aim, because his sensitivity is perhaps too high, well, maybe this duel is only an 8 out of 10. But if he would do the duel with a 360 first, he would have a higher chance of winning it than Saivu. Or if Simple would go out in an area where he doesn't know where the opponent is, he is more likely to be getting the kill than Saivu, because Saivu and players like Nico and these players who don't have that high sensitivity, Saivu has a pretty average sensitivity, but a little bit lower. These players, they rely more on crosshair placement. And Simple doesn't have to rely on crosshair placement. This means Simple's advantage lies in the aggressive and the unpredictable. He can go out in an area where he doesn't need people to be close to his crosshair, and he will possibly still win the fight. His time to kill will possibly still be very low, even if the target is not near his crosshair. Making a flick like this and spamming is easier for someone like Simple than someone like Nico, who has to make the adjustment slower. Nico will have to rely on getting the headshot. Simple can rely on getting, picking up bullets in his hand and just throwing them at his opponent and hoping something sticks. But for Saivu, the advantage lies in that if he knows that the guy is CT and he wants to peek him, he can go out and do a very consistent peek and hit him exactly in the head. Because anyone who is close to his crosshair, it's reliable. That's why players like Device and like Saivu, and to some extent even Nico, these players are more system players. You need a sort of good team around them for them to really take over games. You need to set them up in a way where they play in their comfort zone. But someone like Simple, he could join any team and have impact, because he is more unreliable. But therefore also more unpredictable. And I know now I'm saying good things about Simple. I want to return to what I said. Simple is a statistic anomaly. You should not be that good with that chaotic of an aim, in my opinion. But he is. And even when he was playing Rifle, he was incredibly good. The guy is, incredible. But I would still argue that having a Saivu or a Donk or a Nico or these kind of players that you can always count on and who can use their brains more to take a consistent fight, they are the ones who win over the long haul. You get the feeling Saivu doesn't even have to try to play good to be very good. Whereas someone like Simple, you get the feeling he has to try very hard. And that's why I believe with sensitivity and with aim and these kind of things, what's important is finding something where your micro adjustments are good. There are a ton of players with very low sensitivity, and these are, in my opinion, or at least, especially in the last year or last 2 years, it's very few players with chaotic aim that have come up, in my opinion. Someone like Flamesy, one of the biggest guys to sort of come up, has very clean aim. Dunk has very clean aim. Yabi, very clean aim. I think almost any anchor has very clean aiming. I even think someone like Magisk actually at times looks like his sensitivity is a little bit too high. Someone like Perfecto, sometimes it seems like his sensitivity is a little bit too high. Would these players benefit from lowering the sensitivity a little bit more? They might have hit the sweet spot where you have the fast movement and still enough clean aiming that it is not getting in the way. But I would somewhat argue that if Simple would have gone through his career playing a lower sensitivity, it's possible he wouldn't have developed the same style, but it's possible he would have been better. I guess that's my new aim theory, is forget everything about average sensitivity. Forget what Simple plays. Forget what Nico plays, what Saivu plays. Forget that some players play high. I know these are things I've had focus on today, but they're important to understand my reasoning. And then think about the fact that all you need to do is finding a sensitivity where you are able to consistently, smoothly, and reliably go from one point to another in case you get peaked from multiple angles. Even now, I don't even know what sensitivity I have. Yeah, I have Simple sensitivity. I'm not able to reliably do this on a practice server. But if I go to my sensitivity I played in Sprout, well, it's very easy for me to keep this going and be consistent. My micro adjustments, you see it. My flicking comes and then my micro adjustment. If I'm playing simple sensitivity, well, the micro adjustments are just not as accurate. I have to rely on the first flick to land me the right spot. And that's that's my new theory about aim.
So would you say that under flicking with a low sense is a lot more it's like much easier to handle than over flicking with a high sense?
I think it's an easier problem to solve. I guess that's kind of how it is. I think you should work on playing in a way where you waste as little time moving as possible. And overflicking is a very common way of wasting mouse movement. But technically, if you underflick, you're not wasting mouse movement. I mean, obviously, if you're just asking is overflicking or underflicking better, well, they are pretty similar. But I do think also for the brain, it's easier to recognize in the movement, so more like your subconscious, to recognize, do I not have enough speed to make it here? Or do I overspeed, now I need to do a new calculation, or I have to go back, if that makes sense. Okay. I think many of the low sensitivity players are the greatest aimers. And many of the high sensitivity as well, but they're
kind of toying with 550, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like this better. I'm like not shaky on 550. I kind of hate it.
Yeah, I know, and I also hate, because I love playing high sensitivity, and I do it also a ton on my stream. I change sensitivity a lot because it keeps the game fresh. But if I was trying to go pro still, I would ask myself to stop doing this. And if I would be playing pro still, and I think actually I will give it a go now for a while on my stream, playing a 0.8 like I used to in Sprout. I know at the beginning it will be difficult because I'm not used to it, and I will feel like I've lately been playing 1.1 sensitivity, and this will feel more natural to me. But at the same time, I know my level of micro adjustments on sensitivity 1.1 does not, I think, even beat the average level of micro adjustments from Faceit players at my level, and I'm a former pro. But if I lower my sensitivity to something that more accurately fits my level of micro adjustments and something that I can handle better, well, I think I will get more consistent results. And more consistent results means I will be a better player.
Yeah, it's kind of for me, right? Like, it's not the fact that 550/600 feels great for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that like I want to play on the higher sense because it just kind of before I played this game, before I played in June, I was like a very high sensitivity Overwatch/Apex player.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing like 25 centimeters for 360.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be in EDPI. I guess something like in between simple and walksick, I guess.
Yeah.
So like when I made the switch to CS:GO at the time, it was just like, yeah, this is not working. So there's just a day where it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna shoot it all the way down to 1.6400, which was 600 at the time.
Yeah.
And I kind of stuck with it. But there's always like something in me mentally where like maybe I should try raising my sense, but I don't know.
Everyone wants to play high sense. High sense looks more fun, and a lot of the highlights come from people with high sense because having more erratic or more chaotic aim will typically do more highlights. But when you think about it, it's just that the highlights look better. Because someone like Nico has a ton of highlights, but when he does it, it doesn't, like, he relies on getting highlights like a sick one tap or something like this. But you remember a flick from Simple more than you remember a one tap in a random match from Nico. Or if Nico gets 35 kills and he has been dominating everyone but hasn't made a single highlight, you will remember that less than Simple doing 25 and having some crazy highlight. And
yeah, that was
yeah.
What got me into Counter-Strike was Scream.
Yeah.
I loved watching him play.
Yeah.
Again, this was like when I was a casualist player.
Yeah. Yeah.
but like I sort of want to run his sense, but at the same time I know like 550 DPI just feels right. Like I hit my shots, I can track.
I think you should all give it like 2-3 weeks, even if you play bad. Give it 2-3 weeks. Like find a sensitivity where you feel like you can even use something like AimLab or Kovacs or something like this. Find a sensitivity that you feel good with in terms of micro adjustments, and then yeah, when you have that, then stick with it for 2-3 weeks and come back to me and give me the results, because I'm 99% sure. Okay, maybe 99 is too much. 95% sure that you will see an improvement in your overall game. So yeah.
I'm gonna give Scream Sense a shot. I feel like that might be like just low enough to.
I mean, if you play 550 EDPI, that would be double, or like 600 EDPI. It's almost like doubling your sense. So it's, if you already feel like your aim is shaky now, I can tell you already Scream Sensitivity won't work for you.
It's not shaky. It's just like.
It's also not so much about being shaky. It's about if you think you can micro adjust. But yeah, if you feel like it, you should do it. For sure. I wouldn't recommend it for you specifically, and I wouldn't recommend it for me specifically either. Scream sensitivity is too high for me. That's for sure. Do we have any other questions before we end the session, my friends?
Yeah, I have. Okay.
You can go.
No, you can both. Like one at a time, but like I will have time for you both. Is what I'm trying to say.
You go first.
Okay, thanks. So I just wanted to ask. So I've had this thing, like I was just going into aimbots, and I was noticing that I was I was trying to focus on not over flicking, because I realized that I was wasting a lot of, you mentioned time to kill, by over flicking every kill. So I wanted to ask, like, how do you know when you've reached like your almost maximum potential for your sensitivity, like micro adjustments wise? Like, when do you know that it's, okay, I've reached my peak with this sensitivity, maybe I should try and lower it down? Like,
I mean, if you reach your peak, that means you should keep it. That's basically it. Like, you want to find a sensitivity that is as high as possible, but where you still have very good control of micro adjustments, basically. Someone like Forest and Flamesy, their micro adjustments are good even on a high sensitivity. But for someone like me, for me to have good micro adjustments, I need to have a sensitivity lower than the average Counter-Strike pro. And
yeah, to what I learned about judging my micro corrections or micro flicking. Well, there's a habit I have that I guess is good. I micro adjust on my wrist versus arm.
Yeah.
So
this is pretty common. I think that this is what people are doing.
Even on this very low sense, like if there's like a really small micro flick I make, I should be using my wrist.
Yeah.
It's just like I can't do that above 550/600.
No. That's fair. But yeah, that's basically, I guess, like the wrist is kind of what you use for micro adjustments, like every player. It happens kind of naturally. But yeah, I just think for you, you should try to find a sensitivity basically that you feel comfortable with and that you can control. But if you then go into matches or like face-it matches or whatever, and you feel like your aim is still really shaky and stuff like that, try to drop it down a little bit further and try to like go down to until you feel like there isn't really error in your aim anymore, and then give it a go. Like, just take it on a case by case, because I know I can play good even in, like, I think right now like number 400 EU or something like that in FACEIT, and I know I could play good with simple sensitivity around there, but I would be inconsistent. So half of the matches I would be playing bad. Whereas if I have something that is much closer to something that I can actually control and work with, well, then I would also automatically have much more consistent level, and that is what will win you. Maybe not the specific game you're playing, but it will win you elo in the long run, basically. Like, it's a better investment. Gives a better return of investment, I guess you can say.
Yeah, I think, I hate to say it, but I think I'm making the move to 550 now.
Yeah. you can do it.
It does feel. It does feel better.
Yeah, I think you should try it for 2-3 weeks. Come back to me, but make a deal with yourself that you don't change it until. I think we had one other question as well that wasn't asked yet.
Yeah. How do you feel about the relationship between mouse grip and mouse sensitivity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just what I've realized, and I'm on this, I'm a little bit out of my depth because I haven't looked that much into mouse grips. I've played with just the grip that I have, and I haven't tried others. I know a little bit about different players' grips. I think people who play like this fingertip grip typically will have better micro adjustments because you have very little how can I say, you have very little connection with the mouse. On the other hand, I'm playing pretty much palm, and I think what can sometimes happen to me, at least when I play palm, is that if I get nervous or something like this, I grip my mouse too hard, and this is an issue you don't have with fingertip. And gripping your mouse too hard makes you shake, because you end up tensing your hand and your arm. With fingertip grip, you don't really get this issue because you can't grip with your fingers the same way you can grip with your hands.
There's a difference between claw and fingertip and palm. Fingertip is where you use like fingers for.
Yeah, I think we know that. I think we're. I'm using myself as an example, like palm, and obviously there's also claw, and I know some people like Nexa, for example. I had a talk with him some years ago. Is that like he plays claw, and what he likes about playing claw is that he can kind of tense up his hand without losing this smooth aiming. That was at least what he said back then. So I guess maybe experience with grips if you feel like it. I personally would just keep the grip that you feel happy with. But yeah, I think there is some correlation. I think if you play,
I think claw is just recommended for every shooter.
I don't think I agree with that.
Again, preference, but
yeah. I don't think. I think
like, with claw and fingertip, right? Well, with claw,
yeah.
If you claw, like if you have a proper grip on the mouse, no matter how tense or how loose it is, as long as it's secure, you won't be shaky compared to palm.
Yeah, but I think that's what I'm feeling, that more and more people are not switching to fingertip grip, but it's becoming pretty popular. Like Sabu is pretty.
Also depends on the mouse. Like I have the Super Light 2. It's a relatively large mouse. You can't really fingertip with it.
Yeah, I would characterize Super Light as one of the smaller mice. It's pretty lightweight and pretty small, but it does fill up your hand. I think I saw a very good aimer. I think he's like Dutch Turkish, called Enishan. He wrote the other day on Twitter that I beg you, no matter who you are, don't experiment with mouse grips. I have played fingertip, claw, and palm, and I think I could play them all competitively. He was like semi-pro type thing, almost pro, and he said it is not worth it. It just is another variable to change, and it will fuck with your mind. Just like when I didn't change my sensitivity, I actually think I was much better because it was just even a variable. If I was playing bad, it had more to do with me playing bad and not with I had the wrong sensitivity today. And if you start changing your mouse grip, it's kind of the same. Yeah, I was also playing claw on this match instead of fingertip, whatever. So I think the recommended thing I would say is just keep the grip you have. It might be the case that if you use fingertip, you can have a little bit higher grip, or like a higher sensitivity, sorry. But if you play palm, maybe you need to lower it a little bit, but you will have some added stability. Who knows? I think keep the grip you have, adjust the sensitivity to fit your micro adjustments like we've been talking about today, and then I think you will be, well off.
All right, cool, thanks.
Yes. All right, I think we've got time for one last question.
So like, I know we didn't really talk about this much, but
No, that's fine.
how does movement come into play with sensitivity? Or would your movement be like I don't know how to say it, like much more linear
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of like gunfight movement.
Um,
Like,
I can cover this pretty quickly because I think it's actually a really good. If I somehow didn't expect to spend this long time talking about like this aim thing, but if I would have had more time of it, I would have kind of also gotten to this. Is also one of those advantages you have if your name is Saiwu instead of Simpo. Is that what I've started doing? It's I call it Valorant peek. I think there's some guy who made it kind of famous in Valorant, I guess. But if I jiggle peek someone here, I will go close to the wall and I will wide swing, but like I won't stop until I'm like out to a stupidly far position. If it's this kind of range, it's probably not that great. But I do it, let's say this guy, I know he's standing here or something like that. Then I will maybe jiggle him and then I will like almost comically overswing the angle and now shoot him. Because what typically happens is, at least if you are at a pretty good level, players tend to play the same, right? So when he sees me peeking, he is expecting me to stop here. And so what he will do is he will crouch and spray and he will try to track me. But because I never stop, and because I swung from close on the wall, his first bullet won't hit me. I can overswing and then kill him when he's sitting still. And this is something where if you play a really high sensitivity, really wide swinging with Deagle is pretty risky because you will have one chance. Say I'm here and someone is sitting right side boxes holding me or mini delpin or something. If I'm playing high sense, maybe what I'll do is I will just do like this and try to keep my mouse same spot and use my movement to hit. Because my micro adjustments are not very good. But if I had a low sensitivity and my micro adjustments are good, maybe what I do is I just swing a little bit wider and then I do this like, because I know that my tracking and my adjusting is really good. But if I would try to do this with voxic sensitivity, I mean, it's really hard for me to actually aim exactly at his head, you know? So I think the relation between movement and low sense is that it is typically easier to use your movement to outplay your opponent if you have a sensitivity that you are consistently good with. If you play a really high sensitivity and I want to swing this guy in CT, it's harder for me to go here and spray like this. If I play a low sensitivity, I can just go out and crouch and it's more, I guess, more consistent.
yeah, Walshik's like an extreme anomaly.
Yes.
I don't think his wrists are like normal.
Probably not, but yeah, I don't
Probably
know.
has some like crazy wrists, like one of a kind wrists.
Yeah, I've thought about the fact that he's like basically the only left-handed player. It's, I don't know. It's probably not. Yeah.
Such a strange setup he has, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Left-handed, highest DPI, and like double simple sense almost. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, he is, as you say, an anomaly for sure.
I do love watching him play though.
Yeah.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah, he is good at a lot of things, not just aim. He is also. Yeah, I could talk about that guy for a long time as well. Maybe we need to have a session about what makes, in my opinion, Voxic different than basically any other AWP player I've ever seen. He's really, yeah, as you say, a statistical anomaly as well. Guys, it's getting pretty late, and I have to be up and working in 8 hours. So I will have to skedaddle now. I hope that you feel. Yeah, thank you, man. I hope that you feel like you learned something, or even if you feel like you maybe didn't learn something, I hope that I could challenge your worldview a little bit with some of the thoughts I had here with AIM. Kind of almost none of what I said was fact. All of it is a theory. But I hope I have put together some kind of evidence or compelling arguments that you at least have had your worldview challenged. That's really all I would be hoping for. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks a bunch.